Our next speaker is Terrell Russell of the iRODS Consortium. His talk is entitled iRODS Metadata Templates Working Group, Building Blocks and Lessons Learned.
Thank you, Corey. I'm still Terrell. Can you hear me? All right. Hello, it's the last talk. Here we go. So one of the, was it 5 working groups? I think it's 5 working groups that we have at iRODS is the Metadata Templates Working Group. It is the oldest outside of the one that where we just keep everybody up to date, the Technology Working Group. It was founded in mid-2018, and we realized that having good metadata is important, and nobody knew how to do it in a consistent manner. We were going to talk about that for a few years. That was the plan, right? Produce some pipelines and better environments and consistency. The prehistory for this working group was, 3-4 years before that. So it turns out that we only figured this was a problem after everyone tried to boil the ocean, and there's a lot of water in the ocean. Originally, it was Metalinks, and then Cloud Browser from iRODS. Yoda had an implementation. Data Hub at Maastricht had an implementation. Dataverse started adding some metadata frameworks to their stuff. And of course, Cyverse had an opinion. They were all very different, kind of. Different. They were different in kind, but not like in spirit, right? So we figured this out. This picture is from 16, I guess, 2016. Look, we already solved it, right? So this is Metalinks. This was the graphical. I guess this is actually a mock-up. I don't know if this actually made it to code, but lovely. Looks great. Would be great if we had it. This looks a lot like what Mango does now, which is great, but that's 8 years in the future. So this is how you would create a template. We totally figured this out a long time ago. This is how you would fill one out when a template was presented to the user. So you're applying the data to the template itself. It's great. Cloud Browser had a version. We figured out that JSON schema was probably the way to do it. Metalinks just had their own internal stuff. And I say they because they originally came from the EMC partnership. And then they got eaten by Dell, or they ate Dell. They joined forces. Something happened. But it was not JSON schema. That was a strictly internal representation. So Cloud Browser, which was coming from the consortium, was a JSON schema definition. We had a template which defined the schema, but then that itself needed to be stored in iRODS, and it had a parser. It had all these pieces, right? There was some Java involved. Like, I don't know. Mike did this from our last talk, who worked with Deep. Cesar was the one who made it real, and I just stood on the sidelines and pointed. Because it went through jargon, it went through the jargon library, and of course Mike was curator of the jargon library at the time. Ended up having to build all kinds of mechanisms. We learned about the Swagger API, which of course later got renamed. Maybe iRODS should have a REST API. That sounds good. We should put all this in there and move it all over. A lot of arm waving, a lot of big ideas. By mid 2017, we had a TriRODS talk. So Rick Scarbez was a PhD student at UNC at the time. He's now professor in somewhere in Australia. I think he's in Melbourne. Look at the ocean, right? We had pieces of software that the user could see. We had a piece of software called FormBot that would take it knew how to build a form from a schema to give to the user, the poor user who had to figure out how to fill this thing out. There was Java over there somewhere. A lot of moving parts, a lot of back and forth. So we figured out that, okay, stop. This is too much. Middle 2018, we said stop, and then we stopped. So for like 9 months later. So the Metalinks metadata templates were actually themselves stored in the Metalinks database. So that seems weird. It's client specific. That's not good. We got to pull that back. We're learning things, right? By mid 2019, Maastricht and Utrecht had shown the round trip that was talked about earlier this week as well. The JSON to AVU trick, right? To be able to lean into what we have with what they wanted. Code's there. Some of these famous people are in the audience today. They included type information for the first time. They demonstrated nesting, complicated, they figured it out. They used the unit of the AVU to keep track of that. That was new. and they've handled for both data objects and collections, right? So that was new. That was different. We'd only done it for data objects before, so that was important. There were now, at this point, non-consortium implementations out there in at least 4 different major projects, solving their own problems. They have itches. They needed to scratch them. They needed to solve the problem. And also, about the same time, Cedar had come online as a place to like edit schemas and have an editor for that. It's like that's interesting. At that point in the conversation, we said, okay, we need to work together better. We identified 5 elements. Turns out there's 6 bullets on this slide. That's confusing to me. Last night it looked like 5. So I think the bottom one is supposed to be that way a little bit. So there was a representation of the schema, right? A tool for editing and managing and all that kind of stuff. We had a tool for managing the data itself in terms of applying those things. We had to translate the schemas in and out of some way to keep them. And then, of course, there's UIs all over the place. They all look different, right? So 5L. Okay, next month, we reordered them and put them kind of in a layer cake. Everybody loves a layer cake. So now the bottom was the most important in terms of foundational stuff, and then kind of moved up. The UIs are at the top. Look at all these parties. Everybody's having a party. By late 2019, we separated a bit more. First time we had a use case of using an externally defined schema. That was a revelation, right? Yoda figured out how to do that. They pointed at a schema defined by somebody else, stored somewhere else. So this is the future. Also, we identified that, gosh, this is slow. So atomic application of multiple metadata unit attributes at the same time was important. So we agreed in September 2019 that was important. By October, we said, okay, we're going to lean into this Swagger thing, and here are the 7 things we're going to have to implement. Well, 6 plus maybe a 7th. We need to resolve, right? Like what am I talking about? We need to be able to list the ones that are on there. We need to attach them. We need to remove them. I would like some kind of listing of what's available to me. We could see how a UI could use these 6 or 7 endpoints, as well as this 6th one was resolve the schemas that define the metadata on a particular combination of templates. We didn't understand how to do that, but we said it out loud. We wrote it down. And then, of course, the last one was, well, what if I wanted to collapse them down? And that sounded hard. I didn't know how to do that. Early 2020, we agreed that wouldn't it be cool if we had some demonstrated external defined schemas that we could point to together and maybe kind of play with them. Let's use Cedar to do that. Let's export that. Let's use PEPs. Everything's a PEP, right? It's great. We figured out how to do atomic AVUs in 2020. That was real. Hooray, we did it. Of course, nobody was using it because nobody upgrades. So sorry, that's not me. July 2020, we realized that Cedar could be the editor, but you basically have to pay them if you want them to be the host. So you can use them to fiddle around, but if you want to, you have to host them somewhere else. So that was a roadblock a little bit, or at least got in the way a little bit of our big plan. And then we also learned about the JSON forms universe. There's a couple implementations of people solving that form bot problem opportunity of taking a schema and turning it into a thing to show to a human. Not obvious, not easy, right? But we didn't want to solve it ourselves if somebody else was already getting it right. And this is addition to our other job, right? This is just this ongoing, right? Every time. So late 2020, Yoda used the atomic endpoint. Look at that. We talked about aggregating templates recursively. Oh, it's like, no, we were already aggregating on one. That was hard enough. Now we're going to go all the way to the root of the tree. How's that going to work? Who's in charge? What happens when they conflict with each other? My version of author is not the same as yours. I have a regex, whatever, right? So this is hard. The elements of the architecture at this point became, the 5-layer cake has collapsed a little bit. So we've got creation of these things. We've got hosting of them. We've got using them. And then, of course, there's a GUI. And of course, for this reason, it's upside down again. I don't know. The relevant API components then become the client, browser, the user person, right? The stuff in the middle, and then the rule engine to deal with it. And then we learned that Cedar was moving to JSON LD, and we're like, I don't know anything about that. That sounds hard. Depending on other people is So you have to have trust, right? So late 2020. Whoa, wait a minute. That's the same slide. Okay, 2021. I totally did these like weeks ago, or last night. January 2021. Go Fair had showed up with opinions, and they were using Jinja templates. I was like, that's pretty cool. We should not invent that wheel again. Maybe we realized that there's no one way to do this, and we should get out of this business and let applications choose how they want to do this. We should just stick to what we know how to do well, which is the API, and don't even think about GUIs, right? That's for those people out there in the audience. We decided to do that in 2021. We're just going to stick to the API, and the subject areas should drive the actual application. So I don't know enough about genomics to build a genomics GUI. Certainly don't know enough about nuclear physics to build a nuclear physics GUI. So we all agree that's what I should do. Stay out of that. We should not be defining or managing templates for anyone because they will be out of date and wrong instantly. So that's not my fault. But we should provide a way to validate those really smart things that somebody else makes against the data in the system. So 2022, look at my time, look at that. We were at eResearch New Zealand and heard 2 or 3 talks about how this is hard, and we're trying to build all this stuff. And we're like, you're boiling the ocean, you should not do that. But it was validating to what we were doing here. The curators do want to be a part of this. They want to be a part of the conversation. So now there's a GUI for the curator as well, right? And then the enforcement and knowing whether things are going well is back on the user potentially. The users want to help generally, as long as you don't make them do a lot of work. But if you can nudge them, they are willing to be nudged generally. Kai Leuven showed up and built Mango. It's like, ta-da, look, we've solved it all. It's like, that's great. They had templates, they had an editor, they had optional stuff, collections and data objects, right? That's cool. That's pretty great. Look, another one on the list. Now we have 5. So June 2022, we should write all this down. So we agreed. We haven't done that yet. August 2022, we realized the community is going to continue to push this, right? We're not going to be the ones pushing this forward. Our role, reinforced, is to hold court, see what's happening, look for similarities, and potentially help with some generic, some building blocks. So we can build stuff in Python quick. We can iterate, everybody can see it. We can always harden the right answer to C++ later for speed if we want to. So yay, we're all in agreement. We learned about the thing from 20 years prior called the Minimum Information About Microarray Experiment in 2022, because we read. And they had solved some of the same problems. That was great. We realized that machine actionable data management plans are the future. Cool. I don't know what that means yet. But again, we should be in the business of validating, right? So we should let smart people define the schemas and just provide the thumbs up, thumbs down so that people can program against that. I almost remember this. This is like last year. We were at RDA 20 in Sweden, and again, boiling the ocean, right? They were struggling to, even amongst the same kind of domain, to get consensus on what to do. And the takeaway, again, is that every discipline, we know this, it's the broken record, right? Consistency is hard. People don't like to talk to each other. It's a mess. Meanwhile, Kai Leuven's still solving the problem. They wrote the editor schema in JavaScript. They move it to the client. The versioning, I think, was almost working at that point. But they had a question about how the new template would affect old data. Are things now out of date? Do you have to walk the whole tree and send everybody an email? And then also they had project level management now with associated templates. So they kind of leveled up, and it wasn't just about the collection anymore. It was about the project. That was good. And then in June, they solved the namespacing problem. So we don't have to converge anything. So now they use a period. This is brilliant. Solved it. In July, this gets its own slide. Look at this one. So lots of brainstorming, some bad ideas. If we do this the grown-up way and we learn how to do everything right, do we make a new table in iRODS? Do metadata templates become a first-class citizen? Do they get their own jQuery tokens. Do we have microservice? Oh, it's too much. Okay, Leuven solved some of this more stuff. They now have two types of templates. They've got one for the rendering and one for the data. It's neat. IT for Innovation cheated a little bit, and they forced everyone to use one schema. It's like, that's good if you're in charge. But it also allowed them to quickly make progress and start exporting to Elastic. And so they solved it for multiple zones. So that's pretty good. At this point, the list was reducing. So we were thinking, okay, we're going to write these in Python. There's only going to be 4 of them. We got this. Attach, detach, validate, and then this kind of rasterize, collapse, go get everything and show me what's going on. And we're definitely not doing JSON LD because that's still a hot mess and moving sideways in multiple directions. So we're going to stick to JSON schema. It's going to be great. Near the end of last year, look at the time. All right. So Utrecht had separated a few pieces, and I think things become clear when you can pull the spaghetti apart, right? So they had separated the UI. They had separated the JSON schema for the metadata, the schemas itself. The research space that they've got did not, I think you were just not doing this in that space. So that was not a problem to be solved. And then they were using the full schema and everything for their vault space. So they chopped it up and attacked the small pieces. And the other concept was that now we have this idea of metadata guard. Oh yeah, we probably shouldn't let the people just change the schema on the, okay, so we should use the guard to protect the metadata that's protecting the metadata. There's a lot going on there. By November, we had some initial Python rules for those things. So attach and detach were pretty straightforward. It's just an AVU. Error checking, we'll do that later. Gathering was going to be pretty straightforward. I think I had a good idea about that. And then validate sounded hard. It depended on gather. This year, we asserted that collection should have more than one schema. Brilliant. Welcome to 2024. The gather immediately gave us trouble because am I trying to combine perfectly good existing schemas and make a ball of mud of my new one? And then are they all, so this all of attribute in JSON schema? It's like, do I want to be a part of that conversation with my code? I don't like that. It felt wrong. I think we're just going to loop through the ones that are attached. It might be slower, but it's probably got fewer bugs, right? I think Laszlo pointed out that wouldn't it be cool if we did this for users and groups and data objects? I was like, no, stop. That's hard. So May, which apparently is that now? We're in May. We've got all of them working, I think. So that's good. So the conclusions, the takeaways over this like 8-year, 9-year journey is that there really is site-specific knowledge that I don't want. I'm not going to have. Interfaces are going to they're going to continue to change. Never mind the whole web development business where everything's out of date 3 months from now. Template management itself, same thing, right? It might as well be web development. It's going to continue to change and move. We should focus on what we do, which is the capabilities and the functionality of the API. And we should not be defining the templates for anybody else. We could do validation. That's what we should do. I think I'm estimating that that's going to solve 70 to 80% of the use cases. There might be something else in there that we haven't gotten yet because nobody's seen the code that I just made up. But I think that the original intent of this group has been basically solved as of now. Now it's up for you to tell me how I'm wrong and what else we need to do. And if we care and we get it right, we can always make it faster by using C++. I don't think that's necessarily it, but possibly. Ooh, look at this. Here's some, I forgot to look at that. Don't look at that. So we attached a template. This is an I rule. We have if you blur your eyes to the bold part here, we've got collection attach. Great. Show the AVU. All it did was put that string on that thing and said that it was a URL. And then I removed it. So there's the function for attach and detach. Great. Anybody can call that with language of your choice. The gather turned out to be not so bad. I'm definitely not combining them. I just return an array of schemas. So it's just JSON. So now it's an array of JSON. So this is the gather function. I did not show the printout, but you can imagine what it looks like. It's a printout of JSON. So don't want to see that on the screen. Validating a data object. First, I had to gather. It provides the output into, this is turns out to be a string, which is just an array of JSON. And then I use that as the input for the validate call. And so this will validate the metadata. It aggregates the metadata on that data object and then pushes that and the schemas array into the validator and comes back with a thumbs up, thumbs down, or an error struck. This RC can get printed out and has stuff in it. So that totally works. Validating a collection right now is you gather, and then again, you pass it in along with the logical path of the collection, but this time it just runs data object validate on every data object in there. So it's just a recursive call. This is totally a lie. It's not going back up the tree yet. So that doesn't exist. But the code is real. I have 4 tests. 4 tests. The top one is doing attach, gather, and detach, and testing whether everything showed up and went away. I gave it a bad schema, and I got the error code out correctly. And then, of course, the last 2 that I showed, and they work. And I think that's it. I almost made it.
All right. Do we have any questions for Terrell?
Forgot to give you my future plans. You guys are going to test this and hopefully replace some of the stuff that you're doing in that layer with this. So hopefully you get to delete code and don't find any bugs in my code. That's the plan. And eventually we turn off the metadata templates working group.
All right. We got a question in the back right here.
Do you want to do that first?
You go
Oh,
first.
no, you go
I have
first.
one.
Okay.
And I haven't read this yet, so I'm just going to read it as I go. During the works of the template working group, there was a suggestion from RUG to add labels to iRODS so that one label value can match many objects. That could potentially solve templates issue, as one can make template and validation based on the labels. Maybe it might be a good moment to return to this idea.
So I remember that suggestion. I don't really know what it meant then. I still don't know what it means. I'm happy to talk about it. I don't, yeah. Then I think Tom.
All right. Yeah, got one up here in the back.
Yeah. Do you? I suppose that you validate based on the incoming JSON against the schema. Do you also validate once they have been populated in AVUs? And so is there a translation mechanism from
These are the AVUs.
Yes, from JSON to AVUs that you've chosen or used, or can we standardize something like that? Because also different implementations for that.
Right. So right now I'm just literally building a JSON of key values coming out of the AVUs that are in the tree at the time. There's probably some missing corners that I haven't considered.
Nesting.
Well, I'm hoping that the period helps. To be determined.
Any other questions? All right.